One of the most popular types of investing is dividend growth investing, especially since the prospect of getting completely passive income in the form of dividends is appealing. To most individuals, the idea of being able to get enough money and dividends to pay most or all of our expenses while still earning enough to live a more fulfilling life without being enslaved by a job is a pipe dream. However, there is a significant disadvantage to dividend growth investing, which you may already be aware of if you've seen other YouTube programs. To be able to live off of dividends as a source of income, either partially or entirely, you will need a sizable stock portfolio. To get to that position, we're talking hundreds and thousands of dollars in stocks and ETFs, or in some cases, over $1 million in stocks and ETFs, as I've seen with YouTube dividend investors. Needless to say, this is discouraging to a large number of potential investors. But first, if this is your first visit to our Smart Stocks Academy channel, please accept my warmest greetings. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell next to it to be the first to know when a new video like this is produced. So if you're ready, let's get to the video. Now tell me if this story seems familiar to you. Let's pretend that you're a 35-year-old and you've decided to become a dividend growth investor. You decide to invest $10,000 from your savings account in Johnson & Johnson, one of the most prominent dividend growth stocks on the market. For the past 58 years, J&J has regularly increased its dividend amount. Along with its stock price appreciation, it appears to be a no-brainer that this is a great dividend growth stock to invest in. You will be on your way to a more wealthy future full of passive income before you know it. But then, you see that Johnson & Johnson stock only pays a 2.57% dividend yield. After investing enough money to buy a really good used car, receiving such a low dividend rate doesn't seem so wonderful, does it? But first, let's talk about the most crucial part of dividend growth investing. J&J raises its dividends every year, which indicates that the payout will increase every year as long as the company does not go bankrupt. So, if you have enough patience, you will eventually start receiving more payouts as time goes on. If you think Johnson & Johnson is the exception, you will notice a similar tendency with other well-known dividend growth firms. Let's take a look at some other well-known dividend companies and see how J&J stacks up against them. Here is the 3M Company, which is another well-known dividend growth stock. It currently yields only 3.43% in dividends. Here's Procter & Gamble, which offers a dividend yield of 2.14% right now. McDonald's has a 2.17%, 2.21% for Emerson Electric, etc., etc. Sure, you can keep buying more and more shares of Johnson & Johnson stock, as well as other dividend growth stocks, as we discussed over the next few decades. But you will notice that the goal of being able to live entirely or partially on dividends is becoming increasingly difficult to achieve if you want to do so before you're significantly older. Because of this knowledge, many dividend investors eventually cease investing in dividend growth stocks because they understand that their dream of living entirely off of dividends won't be realized until they're gray-haired and mostly done with their lives. Not to mention, if you're nearing or have reached retirement age, you won't have to wait decades for your J&J payout to appreciate. You are seeking investments that will pay you a lot of dividends right now rather than later. Perhaps you will have more than $10,000 to invest, but unless you're fortunate enough to have millions of dollars in the bank, being a dividend growth investor isn't going to be ideal. Only two categories of people benefit from being a dividend growth investor: those who already have invested millions of dollars, or people who are really youthful and willing to make a huge sacrifice while they are still young, in order to become affluent when they are too elderly to enjoy living off their dividend income. Now, I completely see why some dividend investors aspire to be like Warren Buffett. They simply want to invest and invest, essentially running up the score clock. But keep in mind that Warren Buffett isn't exactly a frugal man. he is a frugal person. Personally, I'm not the kind to save as much as possible and then die without experiencing it. As a result, if you want to start receiving substantial amounts of dividend income every month, right now rather than decades from now, it is evident that you'll need to focus on several types of investments. Obviously, you'll want to focus on investments with greater yields. That's a no-brainer. But there are a few things to keep in mind, such as avoiding stocks and funds that are steadily decreasing their dividend distributions, or investing in very high-risk companies. People often ask me what form of investment is best for someone seeking high dividend income as well as growth in distribution amounts of share price. Covered call ETFs are, in my opinion, the very finest investment that fits those criteria. These are newer sort of investments that hasn't gained widespread acceptance, but they are a gold mine for dividends. QYLD is probably the most well-known covered call ETF out there, with a current dividend yield of 11.8%, and dividends paid monthly rather than quarterly. Understanding how options work is the key to understanding how these ETFs create large quantity of dividends. To give you an idea, these ETFs use a covered call investment strategy, which involves the fund purchasing of a basket of companies in the Nasdaq 100 and then selling call options on those stocks. These options are then sold on a monthly basis, and the option premiums gained are distributed to investors as dividends. As a result, we as investors receive extraordinarily substantial monthly dividend distributions with growth. NUSI is another wonderful choice because its sales put options in addition to buying call options on its holdings. This means that when the Nasdaq 100 falls, which this ETF tracks, NUSI share price doesn't decrease as much, but the trade-off is this ETF pays a smaller dividend yield. It is still above average at 7.51%, and as you can see, this fund was only launched in December of 2019 and has had significant increases in its share price since then. Consider how wonderful the snowball effect of reinvesting those returns every month would be in building up gigantic income-producing portfolios. Alternatively, you might choose to reinvest some of your dividends and spend some others until you've reached a stage where you can totally rely on dividend income. Another wonderful sort of investment that delivers bigger dividends to investors is a real estate investment. Business development companies, or BDCs, are what they are called. They have been there since the 1980s, and they're simply corporations that help small and medium-sized enterprises expand by providing finance. These small enterprises must pay a portion of their profits to the BDC in exchange for funding, and the BDC must then send 90% of the money they receive from these small businesses back to shareholders in the form of dividends, as required by the law. It is not uncommon for BDCs to have dividend yields in excess of 8%. Some of them pay weekly, but the bulk pay quarterly, which isn't awful if the company is still throwing out huge dividends, right? In the BDC sector, there are two stocks that truly jump out to me. One is Ares Capital Corporation, which is the largest business development firm in the world. This one has a high dividend yield of 8.05%. Newtek is another one that I enjoy. BDCs, covered call ETFs, are just a few of the investment types that produce big payouts. There are a variety of alternative options to consider, including real estate investment trusts, closed-ended funds, master limit partnerships, and split share funds, to name a few. The main conclusion is that if you want to start living off of your profits sooner, you need to look for specialized, lesser-known sort of higher-paying assets. Reinvest your dividends as often as possible to accelerate growth of your dividend portfolio, or choose to spend your dividends in some months, such as on a great vacation, and then reinvest in the other months. When you use this method, you will be astonished at how much more driven you will be to be a dividend investor. There is an emotional component to dividend investing in this manner. And with that, today's video comes to a close. If you haven't already, hit the like button to show your love and support for the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell next to it to be the first to know when a new video is posted. Thank you for stopping by to watch, and we hope you had a great time. We hope to see you again.